Dad, I need money to attend university and get a business degree. You're too stupid to go to university. Just go and find a job as a truck driver or work in a restaurant. I passed high school, didn't I? I want to make something out of myself, just like Max. Ha, ha! You're not like Max. You are dumb and lazy. You play video games all day. I am learning about strategy, Dad. I am not as dumb as you think. Hey there, I'm Jake, and let me share the roller coaster of growing up with my younger brother, Max. Our story starts in a regular home where Max was the golden younger child, always spoiled by my parents. They considered him to be more intelligent, and my parents figured he would be getting the best job and would go places. Myself? I grew up a normal kid and liked to go out with my pals and play video games. I did okay in school and wanted to go on to university and take business courses just like my brother. But my parents had other ideas. Dad, I need money to attend university and get a business degree. You're too stupid to go to university. Just go and find a job as a truck driver or work in a restaurant. I passed high school, didn't I? I want to make something out of myself, just like Max. Ha, ha! You're not like Max. You are dumb and lazy. You play video games all day. I am learning about strategy, Dad. I am not as dumb as you think. Yes, you are. Long story short, I finished high school and got a job working as a data entry clerk for a large bank. I still stayed with my mom and dad, who asked me to pay them rent to help pay for Max's university program. Then Max went to attend a business school in the United States that was expensive. Mom and dad were struggling with the fees, so I had to take on a second job to help out with all the bills. By night, I worked as an Uber driver, and by the time I went home, I was dead tired. Still, I found an online course where I decided to learn how to build an app. For 4 years, I worked 80 hours a week and had very little social life because I was also studying on my own time. Finally, it was time for Max to graduate, and we had a big party. Max also told us that he was engaged to get married and was looking forward to a big wedding. Congrats on bringing home the nice degree. It's been 4 long years. Someone's got to do it. Since I am the intelligent one in this family, I have to do all the hard work and study to earn my degree. It wasn't easy. I worked hard too. Mom and Dad told me to work 2 jobs to help pay for your education. Why not? Our family cannot get ahead without me. I told you I am the superior, brainy one in this family. Small minds deserve to work in small jobs. I don't think so. I only did this as a favor to you. You owe me big time. You had all the time to study and get good marks. Put a lid on it, Jake. By the way, thanks for helping me with the wedding. I thought that when Max graduated, I would be able to work only 1 job. But no. Mom and Dad told me to continue with the second job to help pay for Max's wedding. I obeyed my parents because I was still living at home. I continued to work for many months, and one day, I was so tired at work that I fell asleep at my desk.
What are you doing, Jake?
Sorry, I must have dozed off.
Are you on your break?
No, sorry, I'm not.
Sorry, Jake. I have to report this to HR and you may be suspended or terminated.
I was sick to my stomach when I heard this from my manager. She marched me to HR and told the manager there that I was sleeping on the job. They were not happy, and next thing you know, they decided to lay me off. As I drove away, it was raining hard. Before I knew it, some young newbie driver hit my car, damaged beyond repair. I told my dad that I lost both jobs, and he was very disappointed in me. Dad was so mad, he even decided to kick me out. He told me that I owed them for this month's rent. I had no money, and with no place to go, I went to the library. At the library, I met my old buddy, Barry, from high school. He and I used to play video games. He was kind to me and allowed me to stay at his place. He also helped me get a job working in the restaurant as a waiter. One day, Max walked into the restaurant with his new bride. You ruined my wedding. Thanks to you, I couldn't go to Cancun and celebrate. Mom and Dad said there was only enough for a smaller wedding celebration at the Vista Hotel in the city. Yes, I lost my job and my car. Loser! I can't rely on my brother. It would be nice if my brother could buy me a nice wedding present. I gave you everything because I worked 2 jobs to help pay for your school and the wedding. Like what? How about a BMW? How about you get out of here? You can't talk to me like that. I am the smarter one. You are the dumb one, working manual jobs. You should be happy that I am talking to you right now. Get out before I have you thrown out. Fortunately, the manager of the restaurant saw what went on, and he didn't like Max's attitude towards me. He walked Max to the door, but before he could send him off, Max decked him, and my manager lay on the ground motionless. The cops came, but somehow Max explained that he was the victim, and they let him walk away. I call my mom sometimes, and she tells me that Max is doing great. He is the chief financial officer of a medium-sized company. They are very proud of him. She also told me something else, that Dad doesn't want her to talk to me anymore. I was so upset that I hung up the phone, crying. Over time, I continued taking my online course and learned how to make several apps. Last week, I got a call from the manager of my old job at the bank. Hello?
Jake, how are you? I understand that we let you go by mistake. You were doing a great job as a data entry clerk. You were fast and never made any mistakes. For 5 years, you always came to work on time, and you also pointed out some areas where we could save money. You made one mistake, and we are willing to forgive that. Will you come back?
Yes, in a heartbeat. I will never sleep on the job again. When can I start?
Tomorrow? I think you would be great as an office manager. Would this amount be enough for you?
I looked at the salary that she offered me, and it was double the salary I had received before. Of course, I took the job, and I also called my mom and dad to give them the good news. I talked to my mom, but my dad was still mad at me because of Max's wedding issue and refused to talk to me. Although I was sad that my dad didn't want to talk to me anymore, I went to work as usual. At night, I worked on the app and decided to create something, just to help customers manage their money. I showed it to my manager, and she loved it. Instead of just handing it to them, I told them that I would sell it to them for $250,000 because I worked on the app during my own time. They accepted, and I was so happy. My app made the front page of a business story in the newspaper, which caused my dad to call me up the next day. Jake, my son, I missed you. There was something in his voice, though, that felt off. It just seemed like he was hiding something that was bothering him. What's wrong, Dad? You seem upset. This isn't easy to say, but Max is a gambler, and he used all his money to spend on casinos in Las Vegas. He lost big, and he also borrowed from me. I am not able to pay for my mortgage. Sorry, Dad. I can't help you. You didn't help me all these years when I needed you most. You left me when I had nothing. I worked night and day to help pay for Max's schooling and wedding. You always insulted me and said I was stupid. No thanks, I can't help you. Please, son, I am your dad. I refused to budge, and finally, my dad went on his way. I heard Max owed some loan sharks millions of dollars, and he is on the run from a criminal organization. The mafia has a price on his head because of the money that he owes. My dad ended up living in a homeless shelter. He fought with another resident, and someone stabbed him in the back while he was sleeping. He never recovered from the stab wounds. Because my mom was always nice to me, I allowed her to live with me in a fancy townhouse. It goes to show that even though I wasn't the favorite son, I finished first. Thanks for watching. Make sure to subscribe and leave a comment down below saying I subscribed, and we will try our best to reply to your comment. A week later, though, when I went to our weekly Sunday dinner, I was expecting my family to make fun of me for my announcement. But when I showed up, well, I was not expecting what happened next. For starters, there were several police officers at the house waiting for me. Hey, what's going on?
You have a lot of nerve showing your face here after what you've done.
What are you talking about? What do you mean? Oh, just stop playing dumb. Officers, this is the man that stole my money. Arrest him. Before I could say another word, the police tackled me to the ground and handcuffed me and marched me away. I didn't know what was going on until I was thrown into a jail cell. I was later told that I was being charged with stealing my father's money. He had apparently kept the inheritance from my uncle in his safe in his office at home, and it had been stolen. I knew that I was innocent, but my family instantly suspected me and charged me with the crime. Hi there, my name is Liam, and I wonder if anyone out there can relate to what I have lived through. It has been quite a wild ride, and at the end of the day, I really wonder if there was ever anything I could have done differently. Let me start off by saying that I haven't always been the best person. In fact, as a kid, I was kind of a terror. My parents would constantly have to keep an eye on me and make sure that I wasn't getting into trouble, whereas my older brother Joey and younger sister Sarah, they were absolute angels.
Liam, your brother and sister told me that you stole candy. Is this true? Yes, Daddy, he did.
Shut up, you snitch.
Forget him. Liam, did you steal candy?
Yes, Father.
Liam, you are grounded. Now get over here and receive your spanking as well.
I really don't know why I kept acting out. I mean, the spankings were awful, and on more than one occasion, my parents even would slap me as well. Honestly, it wasn't until high school when I finally snapped out of being a rotten kid. I was being stupid, and I took my parents' car for a joyride and crashed it. As a result, my parents put me into one of those scared straight programs where convicts in prison yell at kids and tell them their life stories, so that the kids learn the hard lessons and don't become like them. It was terrifying, and after that, I had indeed learned my lesson, and I changed my life around. I got a part-time job, and I paid my parents back for wrecking their car. I even kept the job after I did, and started to save up for school later on, as I wanted to make something of myself. However, my parents never stopped seeing me as just some delinquent. Looking back though, I think one of the reasons that I acted out so much was because it got me attention. When my parents weren't yelling at me, they pretty much ignored me. Like I said, my brother and sister were such great kids from the word go. They tended to get better grades than me, but my parents also always praised them for whatever they were doing. Joey joined the track and field team, and my parents couldn't stop telling him how amazing he was. Seeing this, I then joined the school wrestling team, and my parents couldn't have cared less. Even when my team was in the championships for all the schools in the state, they still couldn't be bothered to go to one of my matches. And when I came home with a trophy, they barely even looked at it. Instead, they told me to keep it in my room while they placed Joey's medals and trophies on the fireplace mantle, where anyone that would visit the house could see them. At any rate, once I started on the path of the straight and narrow, I pretty much gave up on trying to impress my parents. I knew that they would only ever see me as just a thug, and I figured that the only way I could ever show them that they were wrong would be to get a good paying job and show that I could make it on my own in the world as a productive member of society. I even started volunteering for elections, and I began getting to know some of the prominent members of our city, but none of that made any difference at all. Hey, Mom and Dad, I met the mayor yesterday. He's a really great guy, and he gave me some great financial advice.
Oh, is that so? Were you just planning on robbing him? You know that robbing such a prominent member would not look good on the family.
Rob him? No, I would never do that.
Just like you would never steal a car or candy?
That was years ago. I've changed since then.
A tiger never changes its stripes.
They just couldn't see me as anything but a criminal in spite of the fact that I hadn't broken the law in several years. They didn't care though. No matter what I did, my siblings were always seen as being better. If I got good grades, somehow theirs were more impressive. If I got a raise at work, it didn't matter because my parents were convinced that I would just lose the job eventually, because it was only a matter of time before I stole from them. What was worse was that by the time I graduated from college where I took political science, I was working full-time for a candidate that was trying to become a governor, and that was seen as less of a job than the part-time jobs of my sister and brother who were working for a grocery store. It was incredibly annoying, but the real problems didn't occur until after my siblings and I all moved out. We all lived close to home though, and even though it was a huge pain in the butt for me, we all went home on Sundays for dinner. It was a pain as that was when my family would roast me. They would call me all kinds of names and ask if I had managed to not break the law that past week. All I could do was roll my eyes. But then, one Sunday, our father had some bad news for us.
So I have some bad news. Your Uncle Sebastian, who lived across the country, passed away. He was very ill, and he lost his battle with his illness. However, he left me a significant amount of money. That's tragic, Dad. What will you do with the inheritance? Your mother and I haven't decided yet, but we figured that we would just hold on to it until we could figure something out. I know that you were all close to him. Just know that he is no longer suffering.
It was actually a pretty big blow to us. Of all our aunts and uncles, Uncle Sebastian was the most fun. He was one of the few adults I knew that didn't treat me like a criminal, and he had told me more than once that if I put forth the effort that I could make something of myself someday. I was actually kind of surprised that he hadn't left any money to my siblings and I, and had given it all to our father, but honestly, it didn't bother me that much. It was only money, and I wasn't hurting for cash. In fact, I had recently gotten a raise at the firm I was working for as a consultant. That night when I went home, I made the choice to try to make my uncle proud. He had told me that I could be something if I set my mind to it, and so I announced that I would be running for mayor. It wouldn't be cheap, but I had saved up some money from my job, and I knew that I could use my connections to get some donations that would help. A week later, though, when I went to our weekly Sunday dinner, I was expecting my family to make fun of me for my announcement, but when I showed up, well, I was not expecting what happened next. For starters, there were several police officers at the house waiting for me. Hey, what's going on?
You have a lot of nerve showing your face here after what you've done.
What are you talking about? What do you mean?
Oh, just stop playing dumb. Officers, this is the man that stole my money. Arrest him.
Before I could say another word, the police tackled me to the ground and handcuffed me and marched me away. I didn't know what was going on until I was thrown into a jail cell. I was later told that I was being charged with stealing my father's money. He had apparently kept the inheritance from my uncle in his safe in his office at home, and it had been stolen. I knew that I was innocent, but my family instantly suspected me and charged me with the crime. I kept telling the police I was innocent, but they told me that until they were finished with their investigation, that I would have to stay in jail. Hearing this, I knew that I needed to call in a favor, or else I could very well be stuck in jail for weeks, which would seriously hurt my campaign. In fact, my campaign was what made my family suspect me of stealing the money. They were convinced I stole it and used it to jumpstart my political career. Angry, I called a lawyer friend of mine and begged him to help me. Luckily, he was a true friend, and he did some looking into things and even hired a private investigator to follow the members of my family. He suggested that maybe someone in my family had taken the money and that they had used me to take the blame so that they could get away with it. Sadly, I was in jail for a full week before my friend finally showed up at the jail, and shortly after, he did. I was released. I was shocked and unsure what had changed. Thanks for bailing me out.
Oh, I didn't bail you out. I proved that you were innocent.
But how?
Well, it cost me a bit because I hired a few private investigators, but it was worth it. They gathered proof that your campaign was funded completely through legal channels and that you didn't steal the money from your father's safe. That was step one.
And what was step two?
They found who actually stole the money.
Just as he was talking, my brother and sister were marched into the jail in handcuffs and were thrown into a cell. Once the handcuffs were off of them, they attacked each other and began slapping and scratching one another until the officers separated them and threw them in different cells. Apparently, the private investigators noticed that my siblings were drowning in debt, but recently suddenly had a lot of money that they paid off their debts with, and then began to splurge on buying a lot of luxury items. Joey bought himself a new car, while Sarah bought all sorts of jewelry. I knew that I was innocent, but I had no idea that my siblings would end up being the actual criminals. I couldn't help but laugh at them, which only made them even angrier. It appeared that they both assumed that the other had ratted them out, and that they hadn't figured out that it was their own stupidity that had gotten them caught. The real tragedy was that once my parents showed up, they kept telling the police that I was the real criminal and that my siblings were innocent. The police, of course, tried to show them the evidence that said otherwise, but they just refused to listen. Just as always, all I could do was shake my head and just leave them to their delusions. After all, I had work to do, and I wasn't going to let them ruin my future. Months later, both Joey and Sarah were sentenced to over 3 years in prison each. My parents tried to spin things and say that the money they stole was just a gift, but the police had too much evidence to show that it had been theft. However, that wasn't the end of my family's problems. As it turned out, my uncle had indeed left money to Joey, Sarah, and myself, but our father had kept it all for himself. That landed him in legal trouble as well. Since he had gone against what was dictated in the will, he was charged with a misdemeanor and ended up going to prison for a couple years as well. My mother was the only one that walked away mostly scot-free, but with my father and siblings gone, she struggled to keep the house and ended up having to sell it to pay for my father's legal fees. In the end, after my father got out of prison, the two of them ended up renting a small little one-bedroom apartment. It wasn't much, but it was all they could afford. As for me, after my father was convicted, he was forced to give me my share of the inheritance, which greatly helped me with my campaign. I had been so worried that my family drama would make people hesitant to vote for me, but it only ended up humanizing me and making people like me even more. It was such a boost that I ended up winning the race in a landslide, and I am happy to say that I am now the mayor. It really hasn't been an easy journey to get here, and I often wonder if maybe I had cleaned up my act earlier, if it would have changed anything with my parents and siblings, or if they were always destined to be the people that they became. But at any rate, I won't let that affect my future. And who knows, after I finish my term as mayor, maybe I'll set my political sights on something a bit higher like president. Do you think I would make a good president? I always knew you wouldn't get anywhere, Arthur, with that arrogant attitude. You think you can do anything without consequences. Excuse me, but we're in the middle of a funeral. Could you please leave so we can continue? Actually, yes, it does matter. I came to get my employee, and I'm not leaving without him. That's when things got out of control. My boss grabbed my arm and tried to drag me towards the exit. Of course, I tried to free myself from his grip, which made him even angrier. And he started shouting, insulting me, and telling everyone how terrible an employee I was, stopping even to criticize the smallest mistake I had made in the office to make me look like the bad guy. He was out of his mind, not seeming to realize where we were, and that there were at least 100 people in the room who needed silence to continue the ceremony. When he saw his verbal tantrum was going nowhere, he tried to use force again. He couldn't grab me again, but he started throwing punches and kicks at anyone who tried to stop him. You need to stop this madness. This is a funeral. Just shut up. Then my boss punched the priest. The security had to be called to remove my boss from the premises. Hi, my name is Arthur, and I have been working at an insurance company for more than 6 years. Although I do my job decently, always arriving punctually and ensuring a minimum number of sales per month, I don't think I could consider myself the company's #1 employee. Rather, given my shy nature and day-to-day performance, I could be considered just another worker. I didn't have any special talent for my duties, but I was not lacking in enthusiasm and willingness to learn. Maybe that's why, despite not advancing in my position, I became the veteran whom my colleagues admired and got along with well enough to form friendships that extended beyond work hours. And yes, I loved working there. The feeling with those people was mutual. The only problem, or inconvenience, was my boss. A despot who had been in his position long enough to believe he had the right to treat others like mere insects he could step on. Arthur, the marketing plan you made for the new alarms is absolute garbage. You need to redo it by the end of the day. But I've already redone it twice before. What do you expect if you don't put any effort into it? Do you think I'll just accept it as it is? The target audience is wrong, and I also don't like how you outlined the promotion strategy. Why didn't you tell me that before when I submitted the plan last time? Don't talk back to me. That's all I needed. You'll be staying late until you finish it properly, even if it's 2 in the morning. The client wants this ready for tomorrow, and so it shall be. My boss often made me redo entire plans, making me stay at the company for countless extra hours without any additional pay. He would also insult me frequently, saying my work was worthless, and that even the guy hired just to run errands and serve him coffee was more capable than I was at producing the necessary reports. But despite all these insults and threats, my boss never fired me. On the contrary, he made sure to squeeze my time to the maximum, giving me as many tasks as possible. It almost seemed like he wanted to enslave me to the company, regardless of what I might think. Initially, I thought it was just my imagination, that any day now, my boss would get tired and hire someone more capable than me, someone who wouldn't talk back when he crossed the line with his orders. However, I realized that would never happen when my partner fell ill. I need to take a few days off to take care of her. Oh no, absolutely not. Do you think I'm going to pay you to go off on vacation with your girl whenever you feel like it? I already gave you a month a year. You should be grateful and stop being greedy by asking for more. It's not for a vacation, it's to accompany her to the hospital. She's undergoing major surgery. And those weeks of vacation you give me annually are what I'm legally entitled to. I don't need to be grateful for them. How dare you? Of course, I'm not going to let you go just like that. You say you're going to the hospital, but who knows if that's true? No, you'll stay, or I'll deduct it from your pay. In the end, I was able to accompany my partner, but at the cost of losing a small part of my salary and having to work twice, or even 3 times as much when I returned to the office. I knew it wasn't fair, and that if I reported it, the authorities would be on my side, and I would get justice. But at that time, my partner was already in such poor health that her well-being became my complete priority. I didn't want to get into disputes with my boss. I didn't have the time or energy for it, since I just wanted to focus on helping my partner recover from that damned illness. Unfortunately, even with my help and the doctor's efforts, she didn't survive. The funeral will be on Thursday, so I'll need to be absent to attend. What are you saying? We have a vital presentation with one of our main clients the next day, and we need to use the time to prepare. Denied. It's not a question of whether I can go or not. It's something I must do. As your boss, I must warn you that this cannot happen. Otherwise, I'll fire you. Then fire me. I was going to take leave after the funeral, but if this way I can get some rest, it'll serve me just as well. That enraged my boss so much that he started shouting at me and throwing things off his desk, loudly claiming I had no right to speak to him like that, and much less to leave him hanging in an important meeting on such short notice. I didn't care. I knew I wasn't essential at work because my boss had made it clear in the past. So, no matter what, I was going to that funeral, then take a break, and afterward, I would probably report my boss for unfair dismissal or whatever was appropriate. What I knew for sure was that I wasn't going back to that toxic work environment. My plan was to postpone the complaint until after the funeral, until I felt better emotionally. However, nothing prepared me for the next day when, right in the middle of the ceremony, my boss showed up at the church, interrupting the service just as it was beginning. "Arthur, I finally found you. It's unbelievable that you decided to come here, to an ugly church in the middle of nowhere instead of fulfilling your work schedule. You should be ashamed." "What?" "I already told you I wasn't coming back to work. I even left a resignation letter in the HR department, clarifying that I would come next week to finalize the exit procedures." "Exactly, so you're still not gone, and you owe me work these days at least. Otherwise, I'll have to report you for breach of contract." "Breach of contract? Me? I always knew you wouldn't get anywhere, Arthur, with that arrogant attitude. You think you can do anything without consequences. Excuse me, but we're in the middle of a funeral. Could you please leave so we can continue?" "Actually, yes, it does matter. I came to get my employee, and I'm not leaving without him." That's when things got out of control. My boss grabbed my arm and tried to drag me towards the exit. Of course, I tried to free myself from his grip, which made him even angrier, and he started shouting, insulting me, and telling everyone how terrible an employee I was, stopping even to criticize the smallest mistake I had made in the office to make me look like the bad guy. He was out of his mind, not seeming to realize where we were, and that there were at least 100 people in the room who needed silence to continue the ceremony. When he saw his verbal tantrum was going nowhere, he tried to use force again. He couldn't grab me again, but he started throwing punches and kicks at anyone who tried to stop him. "You need to stop this madness. This is a funeral. Just shut up." Then my boss punched the priest. The security had to be called to remove my boss from the premises. What no one expected was that suddenly the CEO of our company appeared, who apparently had been sitting in one of the back pews of the church, watching everything unfold. And as if by magic, my boss stopped the violence before they could throw him out. "What are you doing here?" "Indeed, you don't know. The deceased was a good friend of my daughter." Yes, well, I'm very sorry for the spectacle, but I had no other choice. My employee left work without proper notice." "That's not true. I did give notice. He just ignored it." "Don't worry, Arthur. I think we'll find a fair solution to this inconvenience." With that said, the CEO apologized to me and my family for the trouble before ordering my boss to follow him out of the church. And my boss, seeing the imminent disaster, let himself be led without resistance. A few days later, when I returned to the office to collect my things and finalize the procedures to leave the company, I found out what had happened. Apparently, the CEO was so disgusted with my boss's behavior that he fired him. That surprised me because I always thought those two were friends, and that no matter what my boss did, the CEO would end up forgiving him. Well, in work matters, that wasn't the case. The CEO did speak with the funeral staff and my family to prevent them from filing a complaint against my boss, even giving us a generous sum of money for the inconvenience. But that little generosity for his friend, so he wouldn't end up in jail, was all he did for him. And once they were alone, he had no qualms about firing him, and warning him that he would never work in any known company in the city if he could help it. My boss spent a few more days behind bars, mainly for the assault on the priest and several funeral guests, but finally got out of there, without a job, and with no one to sympathize with his actions.
Arthur, the CEO wants to see you.
Me? I thought we agreed I was leaving today. If it's about the complaint.
No, it's about work. You'd better see him before resigning.
The CEO never mentioned my ex-boss again. On the contrary, he told me he had been reviewing my work performance over the past few years and realized I was doing twice or 3 times as much as my ex-boss, and that the reports I submitted were considerably better. Hence, he not only wanted to offer me to stay with the company, but he also wanted to promote me, either taking the vacant position or even choosing another that I liked more. He didn't pressure me to return, instead giving me time to think it over. But in the end, I decided on a yes. The work would keep me occupied after the loss, and it was always nice to know that I could earn more and gain more prestige for doing the job I enjoyed. As for my ex-boss, he had no possibility of working in the same sector again, after having gone through the public humiliation of almost ending up in jail. People from the funeral had made videos of my boss and posted on TikTok. When my ex-boss was released from jail, someone set fire to his house the same day, causing significant damage, and he had to do repairs. Due to all the doxing, his wife became scared for her life as people began attacking them. She filed for divorce and left my ex-boss. They never had any children. My boss then got a new girlfriend, but someone tipped her off about his past, and she dumped him. My ex-boss became so depressed that he started talking to himself. The last I heard about him, he had gotten a job as a janitor to survive, since no company wanted to hire a crazy and violent man. People constantly made fun of him in his current job. They would often send photos of him from the funeral to his house. He had no choice but to run away from Texas. Thanks for watching. Make sure to subscribe and leave a comment down below saying I subscribed, and we will try our best to reply to your comment.
Then, I felt a sharp pain in my stomach and I dropped to the floor. I was going into labor. Chris, I'm going into labor now. You need to drive me to the hospital.
No. If you're so sure I'm cheating on you, then that's what I'll do. Maybe this will teach you a lesson on snooping.
And just like that, Chris walked out on me as I was going into labor with our child. Hi, my name is Tracy, and boy do I have a traumatic story to tell you. I had this boyfriend named Chris, who at the time seemed to be the best guy you could possibly imagine. We met at work, where I worked as a nurse and he as a doctor. Things were going amazing, like really amazing. So amazing that I got pregnant out of the blue, and we both decided we needed to keep it, as we both despised the idea of abortion. We agreed to get married after the baby was born, an idea that would come in handy later on. One day, I was over Chris's house getting ready for a movie date. He was in the shower and I was putting on my makeup when I heard a knock at the door. I answered the door and was met with a middle-aged woman wearing inappropriate lingerie. She seemed shocked to see me and became very embarrassed. Who the hell are you?
Pizza delivery, wrong house, sorry.
What the? The woman ran back to her car and drove off. She was obviously lying about the pizza, and it really threw me off. When Chris got out of the shower, I questioned him about this awkward encounter.
Haha, yay. That's really weird. I have no idea what that was about.
He seemed really nervous and kept scratching his head. The next couple of days, I couldn't get this incident out of my head, and I decided I needed to get to the bottom of it. The next time I was at Chris's house, I waited until he went to the bathroom, and I went through his phone. To my surprise, it looked clean until I saw an app I didn't recognize. It was a secret picture app, and I began to go through it. To my horror and shock, there were hundreds of X-rated pictures and videos of my boyfriend and that same middle-aged woman who had been at his house a few days earlier. I struggled to hold my tears back as I screenshotted and sent myself some of the most incriminating ones as evidence, and then tried to continue to act calm for the rest of the night. However, my anxiety got the best of me, and I burst out yelling after we had dinner at his place. I know you're cheating on me.
What? What do you mean?
That woman who showed up the other day, she's your mistress. I saw all the pictures and videos.
You evil pig, you went through my phone?
I think what you did was much worse. I mean, we're about to have a baby together. Then, I felt a sharp pain in my stomach and I dropped to the floor. I was going into labor. Chris, I'm going into labor now. You need to drive me to the hospital.
No. If you're so sure I'm cheating on you, then that's what I'll do. Maybe this will teach you a lesson on snooping.
And just like that, Chris walked out on me as I was going into labor with our child. I knew right then and there that I was not going to marry that evil man. I took out my phone and called my older brother, who rushed to get me and take me to the hospital. He was there for me the whole time, and my parents came too to keep me company. After several hours, I finally gave birth to a beautiful baby boy, and I named him Brady after my great-grandfather. I tried calling Chris, but he just ignored all of my calls. I knew he was with that middle-aged woman, probably cheating on me as I sat there with our son. When I finally went home, my parents and brother questioned me on my Chris had not shown face. I wanted to make an excuse for him, but I decided to come clean about what was going on. My parents became furious, and my brother became completely irate. He had always been protective of me, and I had never seen him so mad before in my life. He immediately began plotting with me on how we would take revenge. Me and my family talked, and I decided that I wanted nothing to do with Chris anymore, but he wasn't going to get off that easy. Finally, Chris called me back and told me he was ready to see his son. I decided I would hide a microphone on my body so I could record our conversation and hopefully get some more evidence. We met at his house, and I brought Brady along. As soon as he saw his son, he immediately started saying horrible things. It was like his whole personality changed now that I had discovered he was a cheater.
Brady? What an ugly name. I can't be that surprised when his mother is as ugly as you. You know, you used to be kind of hot, but now you're just fat, and it made you ugly.
How can you be so horrible to me? I thought you loved me.
Nope, I never did. That's why I've been cheating since almost day one.
I couldn't stand it anymore, so I ran away crying. When I got home, I showed my family the voice recording of the confession from Chris, along with the X-rated pictures and videos to go with it. My brother took all of this in and calmly told me he had a plan. The next day, we called all of Chris's friends and relatives and told them they would need to show their faces at our house that night for an intervention for Chris. We lied and told them that Chris was struggling with a drug addiction and that he desperately needed this intervention as a wake-up call. Almost all of the people we called agreed to come show their support, including his parents, grandparents, siblings, his boss, all of his best friends, and even some of his best friends' wives. That night, they all piled into our living room and we sat in a circle and waited for the next part of the plan. I went into the other room and called Chris. I told him he needed to come over immediately because there was a problem with Brady. Chris rushed over and bolted inside, only to be met with a sea of people from his life.
What the hell is going on here?
Chris, you're going to want to sit down. Chris sat down, and I began to tell the whole story. I confessed to my lies and told everyone that they were not there because of Chris's imaginary drug problem, but they were there to bear witness to how much of a scumbag Chris truly is. I told them everything, about the cheating, about the emotional abuse, and about how he ditched me as I was going into labor. Then I laid the evidence on them. I showed them all of the X-rated pictures and videos I had, and played the voice recording for them as well. Just then, a man started yelling from his seat. It was Chris's best friend, and he had noticed something horrible. He realized that the woman in the X-rated pictures and videos was his own wife, meaning his best friend had betrayed him.
You are the worst person I've ever met. I knew something was going on. You ruined my life.
The man ran out crying. Next, Chris's boss stood up and fired Chris in front of all of us.
I can't imagine the thought of facing you again at work. You are fired, effective immediately.
Chris's boss stormed out, slamming the door behind him. Then, Chris's grandparents stood up and told Chris that they were unbelievably disappointed in him and that they never wanted to see him again. They told him that they no longer thought of him as family, and they too walked out. Chris's parents were the next to confront him.
Son, you clearly have a lot to work through. Me and your father are no longer a part of your life, and you are no longer our son. Please never contact us again. Goodbye.
Chris stood up and dropped to his knees, and he began to sob violently. I couldn't help but laugh in his face. And me, my brother, my mom and dad all had a hearty laugh.
This isn't fair. You ugly cow. You can't just ruin my entire life from one little mistake.
Chris began charging at me full speed with his fist in the air, ready to hit me. My brother jumped out in front of him and smashed him in the face. He immediately collapsed to the ground with a clearly broken nose. My family stood over him with smiles on our faces and told him exactly what was going to happen next. We told him that he was going to begin child support payments starting tomorrow for double the max amount. We told him that if he refused, or if he missed a payment, then we would release his little videos and pictures to the world, forever putting shame on him and his mistress's name. If those got out, he would never be able to work again. We told him that these payments were to continue until Braden was 18, and until then he would have zero contact with his son.
But he's my son. I want to see him.
Too bad. You had your chance at a happy family and you ruined it. Chris grappled with the thought of his life being over, but ultimately decided his best course of action would be to agree to my demands. He had to work extremely hard as a doctor, but almost all of his paycheck went directly to me and my son, leaving him with almost nothing. I hear he now lives in the worst part of town with 3 drug addict roommates and often goes hungry as he is unable to feed himself. As for his mistress, well, she was kicked out of her house by her husband and is now homeless. Hey, maybe the two of them can live together under a bridge one day after Chris retires and is left with nothing. Do you think I'm being too harsh? Or do you think my master plan worked perfectly? Do you think he deserved it? There weren't much friends, as we both had a very small circle. When it came to the moment, the priest asked if anyone opposed us from getting married. Jeffrey's sister suddenly walked in. Everyone turned to her, but her eyes were on me as she advanced toward me. Her mom tried to stop her, but she roughly pushed the woman, causing her to fall. I immediately knew something was wrong. I didn't take my gaze off her. As she got closer to me, I noticed she pulled out a small jar from her pocket. Jeffrey tried to go to her, but I held him back. In a swift moment, as she threw the content of the jar toward my direction, I pushed Jeffrey, and we both landed on the floor, the content only touching a small part of my leg. It burned me so much that I had to immediately be rushed to the hospital by our friends. It was acid. Jeffrey tried to catch her, but she was fast. She ran to a getaway car waiting for her and sped off. Unfortunately, she crashed a few minutes later into a police car. Hi, I'm Tina George. I'm 28 years old, a mother of 2, and living happily with my husband, Jeffrey. I met Jeffrey during my lowest time. I'd just lost my job, my rent was close to expiring, and I was running out of money. We first met during an interview I went for in the company where he worked as the head of the marketing department. I'd interviewed to occupy the post of a marketer, and he thought I was the best of all candidates. As you might have guessed, I was employed immediately. He did help me a lot. I became one of his best workers in less than 2 weeks, as I was very hardworking and dedicated. Somehow we extended into our private lives, and soon our friendship extended into a relationship after we both confessed our feelings to each other. By then, Jeffrey had started an online marketing company, but he didn't quit his job. Of course, I assisted him with it. We both put in equal work to push the company. Nearly 2 years later, we'd gotten to a satisfactory stage. We still continued working at the company, as we didn't want to focus on just one income stream. One day, Jeffrey told me he had a surprise for me. I love surprises, so I was elated to hear that and grew so curious as to what the surprise was. Eventually, the day came and we left together. He blindfolded me once we were close to the place. He helped me out of the car and led me into a place. When he opened my eyes, my jaw fell. In front of me stood a huge ongoing mansion. From the look of it, I could already tell it was going to be heavenly. As I turned to ask for clarification of who owned it, I met Jeffrey on one knee, holding a glittering silver ring out to me. He proposed to me. I had tears in my eyes as I accepted, and he slid the ring into my finger. I'd thought my life would go smoothly from there until I got introduced to his family.
I was going to bring her a long time ago, but I wanted to be sure about what I'm feeling before doing that. This is Tina, the woman I want to spend the rest of my life with.
Now, before our visit, I was nervous. I hadn't expected them to not like me, because I'm very likable. I was simply nervous as anyone would be for their first visit to their soon-to-be in-laws' house. Their reaction to his words was totally unexpected. They appeared shocked, especially his father and younger sister.
What about Stacy? We thought you two had something going on.
I had no idea who Stacy was. I turned to Jeffrey for an explanation, and he gave me a look of assurance.
Well, you're very wrong. Stacy and I were never anything more than friends. Also, if you're not aware, we don't speak anymore. She has a boyfriend now, and he's against her having a male best friend.
From his explanation, I understood that she was his best friend, and his family had thought they had something going on. His parents seemed to be calm after his explanation, but not his sister.
You could have settled for someone prettier than Stacy, not just an average girl.
She said that to my freaking face. Shocked was an exaggeration. I was more than shocked. How could she be so insensitive? If I wasn't pretty, I'd have felt bad about what she said. But I was. I'm very aware of how pretty I am. Her parents disagreed with her and also asked what work I was doing, and I explained to them that Jeffrey and I run his company, and we also work in the same department at our first workplace.
I guess you seduced my brother then.
Excuse me?
I mean, you both work in the same company. My brother is the head of the marketing team and also owns a company. I can understand that you're a gold digger, so you don't have to pretend.
I'm not going to sit here and watch you speak to her like that. Are you crazy?
What? Will you fight me because of this gold digger?
I also wasn't one to sit and be insulted for doing nothing. Well, dearest, if you must know, I was the best candidate in the interview I attended at the company. Your brother and I didn't know each other then. He was immensely impressed with me. And his company? We both started it together, darling, and we're currently running it together. There's no such thing as seduction or gold digging between us, understood? Jeffrey and his parents were obviously impressed with how I stood up for myself, but I could see her eyes spitting venom at me. She was seething with anger where she sat. After then, she didn't speak again until I left, but I knew she developed a deep hatred for me since then. 2 days after we left, it was a Saturday, and I suddenly heard my doorbell ring. I wasn't expecting anyone, so I couldn't help but wonder who the visitor was. When I got to the door, I was shocked to see Jeffrey's sister. "What the hell are you doing here?" She brushed me aside without a word and walked in uninvited. I followed her, asking what she wanted.
Did my brother get you this house?
I found it funny and laughed. I work for my money and pay my bills myself. I rented this apartment with my money, okay?
Oh, you liar! I wonder what my brother saw in a stupid gold digger like you.
Seriously, what's your deal with me? Why do you hate me?
I hate you because I know you're only here for my brother's money. People like you will only make him forget his family. If you refuse to leave my brother, then I'm going to make him leave you. Gold digger.
I immediately called Jeffrey and told him about his sister's visit and threats. He apologized and promised to reprimand her. I guess he did because the next day, she was at my house, fuming.
You'll hate yourself by the time I'm done with you, Tina. Mark my words, I won't allow you to destroy our family. Since you started dating my brother, he doesn't give me money like he used to. You will regret being with him, trust me.
I tried to explain to her that I had no such intention, but she refused to listen and stormed out. Once when I had a meeting with a man who Jeffrey and I wanted to convince to invest in our company, Tina followed me. Of course, without my knowledge, I'd just gotten home after the meeting when I got a call from Jeffrey. He was laughing so much that I was confused about what was happening. Eventually, he explained to me that someone had caught Tina taking pictures of us and sent him the picture. Even more, Tina also sent him the pictures and told him I was cheating on him. Jeffrey video called her and put me on the call. We embarrassed her so much that she left in so much anger and teary eyes. I'd thought the embarrassment would finally make her stop, but it didn't. 2 weeks later, she stormed my house with her friends. What are you all doing here?
We're here to destroy you before you destroy our friend's family.
They pounced on me and began hitting me. I couldn't fight back because there were over 5 girls. By the time they were done, I was badly injured. I only managed to call Jeffrey before I fainted. He quickly rushed over and took me to the hospital. When I told him and his parents about their daughter being behind it, they were livid. Her father promised to teach her a bitter lesson, and Jeffrey was about to involve the police. But I stopped them. I was going to speak to her myself and explain to her that I loved her brother and wasn't after his money nor trying to destroy their family. However, she never showed up. No one saw her after what she did to me.
She knows she was wrong, and that's why she ran away.
We decided to leave her to herself. According to her parents, she'd caused problems for them since she was little, and they were tired already. They were even happy that she ran away. Our wedding preparation started. Throughout the 1 month we used in setting up everything, including where we'd have our honeymoon, Jeffrey's sister didn't show up. Eventually, 2 months later, it was finally our wedding day. There weren't much friends, as we both had a very small circle. When it came to the moment, the priest asked if anyone opposed us from getting married. Jeffrey's sister suddenly walked in. Everyone turned to her, but her eyes were on me as she advanced toward me. Her mom tried to stop her, but she roughly pushed the woman, causing her to fall. I immediately knew something was wrong. I didn't take my gaze off her. As she got closer to me, I noticed she pulled out a small jar from her pocket. Jeffrey tried to go to her, but I held him back. In a swift moment, as she threw the content of the jar toward my direction, I pushed Jeffrey, and we both landed on the floor, the content only touching a small part of my leg. It burned me so much that I had to immediately be rushed to the hospital by our friends. It was acid. Jeffrey tried to catch her, but she was fast. She ran to a getaway car waiting for her and sped off. Unfortunately, she crashed a few minutes later into a police car. She and her friends were immediately arrested, while I got treated. My wedding was ruined because of her. At the station, she tried to deny doing anything, but the priest told them the church had a CCTV camera. The footage was checked, and that served as evidence. While I was still at the hospital, Jeffrey retrieved the footage from when she brought her friends to my house to beat me up and presented it to the cops. Unknown to me, he also took pictures of me at the hospital after the assault. He gave that too to the police. The pictures of me and our client, which she sent to him, he also presented it to them and told them she'd been stalking me. There were too many accusations against her. She was immediately charged to court. I begged Jeffrey to withdraw the case, since she was his sister, but he refused.
She's my sister, but you're my wife. The woman I'm going to spend the rest of my life with. The one who's going to give me children. I treasure you so much and would never let anyone harm you, no matter who it is.
I tried to talk to his parents too, but they also refused. According to them, I'd become a part of their family, and they'd protect me the same way they'd protect their biological child. They needed her to be taught a lesson, as she'd troubled them too much. Eventually, she was sentenced to jail to serve a 3-year term for physical abuse and attempted murder. She was targeting my face with the acid. She was also found with a lighter, which meant she also planned to set me on fire. I was shocked. Her friends were charged and got 2 years each. After I was discharged from the hospital, we had our wedding again. I did visit her once, and she didn't seem remorseful. In fact, she boldly told me she still hated me and would repeat her actions if she had a chance. Well, hearing that made me extremely pissed off. To pacify myself, I paid some of the wardens to get other prisoners to torture her for 2 weeks. On my next visit, she had bruises all over her body, left cheek and right eye swollen, and had to limp while walking. I couldn't hold my laughter. Before leaving, I paid for another round of torture. I didn't go too far, did I?